In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. This is Aslam Abdullah, live from the IslamiCity in Southern California. I'm a resident scholar at IslamiCity, and together with Dr. Walji, Brother Halim, and many others, we are live streaming the first 10 nights of Muharram, commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Hussein within the context of the oppressed communities of the world. On day one, we had a discussion on the definition of oppression. And yesterday we had discussion on Dalits in India. And Dr. Mike Ghouse made a wonderful presentation, which basically made many of us think about our responsibilities towards those oppressed communities all over the world. And today we have Dr. Mylord Reyes-Tosta, who also is the wife of Dr. Mike Ghouse, and who also is the granddaughter of the former president of Honduras. Dr. Tosta is a professor of Spanish studies at George Washington University. And she has been teaching a native language at several universities in the United States, as well as in different parts of the world as well. As a result of her studies in Spanish education and business administration, she has served as a professor of scientific research in universities in Puerto Rico. She is the founder of Scientific Research Services, a company that conducts and publishes research in the social and cultural fields, including languages. Additionally, she is a Michigan-based language and culture consultant. She will be talking about the native tribes in Americas. And then she will be followed by Dr. Ghouse, who will talk about the Native Americans as well. We are told that when the Columbus arrived, or the settlers arrived, the total number of indigenous people was 60 million. 90% of them were annihilated. How did it happen? And certainly, this is an area worth exploring. We hardly talk about it. We hardly refer to those kind of massacres that took place and those uprooting of those people. So today we have Dr. Mylord Reyes-Tosta to talk about all these things, and Dr. Ghouse. So I now welcome Dr. Mylord Tosta for her presentation. Please, mic is yours.
I am Mylord Reyes-Tosta. I am a Spanish professor of George Washington University. And really, I appreciate this opportunity to share my thoughts and my knowledge and some ideas about this important theme, that it is an indigenous tribe in Latin America and also Native Americans. I'm going to talk about the social, political, and economic discrimination against the indigenous people. So I'm going to start talking about the social discrimination first. I start talking about the colonial period, mention some important facts that occurred at that time with indigenous people. For example, they have to pay taxes. They have to provide food and work and to carry out hard work. And if they didn't comply with this, all of this, they were hardly punished at that time. I mention this because the history says all these events that occurred at that time. And they continue. even when arrived the Independence Day, under the law, they declare that equally in terms of rights for all the individuals. However, the indigenous people continue to be discriminated, and so far to these days. They were considered as a second-class people. This is the indigenous people are considered inferior people without intelligence, without skill, and without talent to carry out more sophisticated activities. In addition, some rights and liberties have been denied. For example, physical and cultural existence, their own understanding of their history, effective mechanisms to protest against or oppose legislation with negative impact in the life of their communities. In other words, no right to protest, for example, and no recognition of their contribution to humanity. We well know that indigenous people in all the centuries, they have been doing great progress in math, in science, in social and political issues. However, the recognition is in nothing. Okay, the next slide, please. This picture here is to mention about Rigoberta Menchú. Rigoberta Menchú was born in Guatemala. She won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1992. And she continued to fight in favor of rights for indigenous people so far. So I consider that she is a great and valued person because she's an activist in favor of these indigenous people like her. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about economic discrimination. Indigenous people in Latin America I could say that they are always suffering of poverty. They are the most poor people, and always they have been excluded from economic opportunities. For example, in the labor field, when he decides to get a job, they are always have been discriminated when we compare with the other races because for many factors. For example, their appearance, their clothes, their clothing, and their skin color, their language. All these factors have been discriminated. That is so sad, but that happened in Latin America. In terms of economic benefit, they don't benefit at the same extent of the rest of the Latin Americans. There are no inclusion in many areas of these people. Talking about countries in Latin America when the poverty have been decreased is Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, and Ecuador. Later, I'm going to talk about specifically in Bolivia because the first indigenous president in Latin America, I'm going to talk later about him. In other countries, for example, Ecuador, Mexico, and Nicaragua, in the last decades, has been an educational gap was closed. Because in the past, the indigenous children, they were not allowed to enter, to enroll in the school in Latin America. And that is a shame. But the gap right now was closed, at least in this aspect. In addition, there are some structural barriers that limit their economic inclusion that I mentioned before. In Latin America, 8% of the population represent the indigenous people. 14% of them, they are poor, and 70% they are extremely poor in America, in Latin America. So that in terms of millions, there are 42 million indigenous people in Latin America. And in Mexico, Guatemala, Peru, and Bolivia had the largest population. 80% of the region total is indigenous people. They represent 34 millions. The next, please. Now we have some space to mention about the political discrimination of indigenous people. And there's mainly about women, because women is still low his political their political participation in Latin America, because women have 3 factors against these people. For example, first, they are female, they are poor, and they are indigenous, mainly. And that is a sad situation against women, because we well know that they have the right to vote. However, their political participation is still low in Latin America. In Bolivia, the political participation of the indigenous people has increased substantially, because this country had a president who is indigenous. His name is Evo Morales. If you could please pass the next slide, because I have a picture of Evo Morales, and I want to talk about in the next slide. You can pass, please, and then come back to the previous slide. In this picture, we are seeing Evo Morales. He was president of Bolivia from 2006 to 2019. Evo Morales was the first indigenous president in Latin America, and he did a lot in favor of the indigenous people in Bolivia. For this reason, the gap in discrimination of the indigenous people was reduced substantially, at least in this country. Now I want to back to the previous slide, please. Ecuador, Guatemala, Mexico, Nicaragua, y Peru are countries with some good progress in the political participation of these people. Bolivia, particularly, I mentioned this country because the 60% of them are indigenous people. It's the country with the largest population with the indigenous. 41 of the 130 members of the parliaments are indigenous in Bolivia, but only 9 of them are women. I continue talking about the discrimination against women. The other population in Latin America is the white mestizo, mainly mestizo. Mestizo is the combination of from people from Spain and indigenous people. The combination, the mix is named mestizo population. And so the white mestizo population is the rest of the population in Latin America, and they were more benefit than the indigenous people. And that's the issue about discrimination. So next slide, please. The other. Next. Now I have my conclusion and some solution. According to UNESCO, the discrimination against indigenous people continue to affect these people in Latin America so far. We don't know the future, but I think, or I can predict that possibly more countries someday will have indigenous presidents again, like occurred in Bolivia. And if the people continue to help these people, we will see some changes in favor and to eradicate the discrimination, at least in some part, against these people. And now I have some solution mainly based on education, because I think education is the base in order to share our thoughts, in order to teach what could be our possible solutions in the classroom, for example. It is a good decision to review the syllabus and the books, study plans for all the careers, to include the worldviews, languages, knowledge, learning modalities, and ways of knowing of these people. I mean, this is diversity and inclusion for these people in the classroom at all levels: school, college, universities. In addition, it's necessary to establish affirmative action programs that ensure the participation rights of members of indigenous people. And in order to these people have the right to protest, and for example, to write proposals to help these people or in favor of these people. It is necessary to ensure that the location of higher education institutions take into account the needs and proposals of these people. I am talking about the location of these institutions, because if the institutions are located near or inside these communities, that is a good benefit, because they have easy access to attend to this education institution. And finally, it's necessary to promote public education to make reflections, debates, and action to eradicate racism in university higher education policies. I am remember right now that in my case, in my courses, in all my classroom. Many times I have been discussing this theme, mainly to the thing is discrimination against the indigenous people, and how to evaluate this issue, how to analyze this issue, and how to find solution to these problems. Okay, and now the next slide, please. Okay, that's it, the picture of my Ghouse, and so he's talking about this picture and his experiences.
Well, Assalamu alaikum. We're comfortable with this. At one time, the Maya civilization was at the zenith of highest civilization. Some of you may recognize the Vijayanagar Empire in India in the 5th to 7th century. It was a very advanced civilization. So was the Mayas, the Toltec, the Aztecs, and some of them. I have visited there several times. Some of those pyramids you're seeing were built by Aztecs and Toltecs. What is amazing about these pyramids is they're built very precisely, precise calculation for the planetary placements, and there are several of them in a line put together. That was the civilization, very advanced civilizations. They got beautiful homes, beautiful canals, everything was there. But when the colonization took place, when the Spanish people came and took over, they oppressed them. As Dr. Reyes mentioned earlier, they did not have the firearms to fight with the Spanish people, and they buckled under pressure, and they gave in to a lot of pressure from the Spanish colonizers. It was, the entire civilization was completely wiped out. And after that, they're still surviving, but even that through oppression. I'll share you an example. The Yucatan Peninsula, for example, it's about 200 square miles peninsula. There is no hospital for serving that big an area, 200 square miles, and there is no hospital. So what do the Native Americans do when there is a need for medicine? They go to the shamans. Of course, the shamans are like the Unani and the other traditions in India and other countries, Chinese traditions. They have their own herbs that they use. So our role there with the Memnozine Foundation, and Dr. Aslam mentioned yesterday, we found out they were running out of the herbs and shrubs, and the government of Mexico was not willing to help them at all because they looked down upon them. So we bought 2 acres of land and bought them the herbs and shrubs to build it for them to create the medicine. And I was in a room, about 20 by 20 size room with a lot of shelving. And the lady there, the shaman, made medicines for the people. And then that medicine was available, then they were training other people. So that was our contribution. From there, we went to this temple where I'm standing behind me. It's the Chichen Itza temple, one of the biggest temples. The Native Americans, the Mayans in particular, are not allowed to go worship. For a long time, they were denied access to even go near there. And they were all crying because it is their heritage. They built it, but they can't have access to it. So I happened to take that group with me. There were 20 of us. And I said, let's go worship on the top of the temple. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. They said, the Mexican police will not allow you. They will put you in jail. We don't want you to do that. And I said, let's challenge them. So I said, let's walk with me. And they started walking. The police came and I said, you can't go there. You can't go there. And I said, no, we are going there. We're going to worship there. And they just start looking at us. And we walked up. We climbed on the top of the mountain. Sorry, not the mountain, the temple. And we had several people do the interfaith. And this is one of the fire that they have. And they worship there. And finally, they cried because they were not able to allow worship in their own place that they built. And that's kind of thing. And then in Belize and Guatemala, the Native Americans, particularly the Mayans, are not allowed to speak their language. If a Maya speaks the Mayan language in public, they're arrested. They're put in jail. This is the kind of oppression they're enduring for a long time. I hope we can do something about it. And then coming back to the Native Americans, the Memnozine Foundation has done quite a lot of work on it. We were able to bring the different tribes, the nations together that they had never talked before. And I have a video that we made called Americans Together. The chief, she was in the Chakra tradition. She was the president for about 564 nations, smaller nations. And she was crying again in the video that the contracts, the US had betrayed the contracts they made with them. And it's a sure betrayal. They didn't keep up the contracts. Then you also saw what happened during the Dakota pipeline. And they ran through their sacred lands where the river ran through it. And of course, there was a lot of protest. And I made a video. I was going to go there myself, but I couldn't. But I made a video about the Dakota pipeline protest. So that's some of, there is quite a lot, but I think on time-wise, I would conclude that the Native Americans have suffered quite a lot. And Aslam, and I attend every Tuesday mornings, we have a meeting called International Religious Freedom. About 150 people come together every week, and then we talk about the atrocities committed by different Nigeria, China, Chile, Guatemala, and all these places. The minorities are continuously persecuted. It is very difficult for minorities any place. Now, let me talk also about the white minorities in South Africa. One of them stayed at my place for about a month, and he was telling me the white minorities going through the difficult times. So when we hear all these atrocities against minorities, we realize, especially being an Indian, what's happening to us is really not much compared to what the people, the Uyghur people are enduring. The Christians in Nigeria, the minority, are enduring, and the Ahmadiyya in Pakistan. Every place the minorities are subjected to oppression. And it is a shame. I hope someday we all come together through discussions and create an environment or create cohesive societies where every human being feels secure about who he or she is, their faith, tradition, culture, language, how they wear the clothes, whatever it is. One should feel secure. Indeed, the purpose, the unstated purpose of religion is to create such societies, cohesive societies. I hope we get to that point someday. And with that, I want to thank you for this opportunity on this Muharram, month of Muharram, and also to honor Imam Hussein, the hero. I consider that we all have to stand up for the rights of other people. We cannot shy back. We cannot take a back seat. If you do it, ultimately, the entire world is suffering because we are shy to stand up for others. We have to boldly stand up for every human being. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghouse and Dr. Tosta. It is an eye-opening for all of us to hear about the native tribes of Latin America and Native Americans in this country. It all started, in 1492 when the so-called explorers discovered a new land as if it never existed. What is disturbing is that was also the time when Turkey was on the rise, which was a Muslim caliphate. And there were straits of Hormuz and Aden that were controlled by those who claimed to be Muslims, with the ships carrying these slaves and carrying all these kind of weaponries to the new land. And none of them intervened. None of them came to the rescue of those native people in Latin America or the United States. And nearly 90% of the people perished. We hardly heard about that. In none of the textbooks and none of the sermons and none of the discourses that take place within the Muslim community, we hear about all these kind of persecution. And yet, we are the one who make tall claims about justice. We are the ones who talk about the rights of others, egalitarianism, and all those things. So, are we hypocrites? Or are we ignorant? Or are we insensitive to the sufferings of other people? Or are we a combination of all these? This is something that needs to be explored, because unless we look introspectively just what we have done to those values that we claim are the essential and the eternal values of Islam, as demonstrated by the Prophet, as demonstrated by Imam Hussein, we would not be doing justice to Islam, nor to ourselves, nor to the world. And it is in that particular context I see the discussion that you had today very meaningful and very powerful, because at least it gives us an idea and it takes the veil of ignorance away from our eyes, that there have been communities who have been oppressed and who have been denied their humanity by us. So where can we go from here, and how we can basically compensate for our ignorance of the past and our apathy of the past in terms of standing up for the rights of these indigenous people? And just one last note, and I would basically ask both of you to make comment on that. The Muslims charities in this country raise millions of dollars every year that usually go to places where Muslims are in difficult situations. It's a very noble cause. What about standing up for those indigenous people, those marginalized people who have been living in utter poverty? And when we go there, we go with the intention of believing that perhaps we might convert some of them. Who cares what religion they belong to? It is their decision to believe in whatever they want to believe. Isn't it our responsibility to stand for their dignity and to help them overcome the injustices that they have been suffering for centuries? Or religion is merely a what you call comfort zone for all of us to believe that by repeating the word justice, we qualify ourselves, for the grace of God, and then we are successful in that respect. I'll give it back to you so that you can make the comments on, both of you, comments on these reflections that I had.
Well, let me share. The United States has taken the leading role. We are not a perfect union, as President Obama used to say, but we are getting there. During the civil rights movement, the Million Man March at the Lincoln Memorial, where MLK gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. Look at the majority. The majority was white people. They took it to protect the rights of the minorities. Whatever the situation was, but it was the majority that took the steps to protect the rights of minorities. Again, we are not a perfect union, but the effort was made, and a lot of achievement has been made, although we want more. So the US can, and also President Obama and President Biden talks about, I think there is a hollow talk right now. They talk about religious freedom for minorities and human rights. They talk about it, but they don't do anything about it. And that is a hollow talk on part of our president. Even the previous president gave a lot of talk, but didn't do much about it. But United States has always taken the lead role in bringing about that kind of value to the society. And I think, again, it will be up to us, the Americans, to work on restoring the rights of the Native Americans and honor their contracts. I'm glad the one thing Biden did was cancel the Dakota pipeline contract and honor the Native Americans. So these are the steps that we can take. And we should not look for government to do these things, but we should look for building up momentum, few people at a time, bring more majoritarian people into the group and show them why it is necessary to create a society, a cohesive society where everybody feels secure. Once you are secure, you focus on prosperity and living a higher quality of life rather than living in tensions with each other. And now I'll yield to you.
Yes, Dr. Tosta, your comments?
Yes, I am thinking about what can I do to find some solution for this problem with the indigenous people. I mentioned before, when in my classroom, I discussed this issue. And I asked my students to find solution as well, solution from them. And I remember that some students think about to write proposal in order to get funds to help these people to carry out activities, protests, in order to raise their voices to the right to be treated equally like the other people, to eradicate discrimination, to eradicate exclusion. So I think I do my part, but I think it could be better. So I think I'm going to continue to think about this situation in order to find some ways how we can do, we can make some decision in order to find solutions in favor of these people. And we know that in short time, we couldn't find solutions, but little by little, we can get some ideas, and carry out action, because we need to do actions. That's what we need to do. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that is clear from the discussions that we are having is that it's a task not only about the native tribes, not only about Native Americans, not only about Dalits, but about every marginalized and everyone who has been facing oppression in any part of the world, that it is the collective responsibility of conscious people of the world who believe in the values of justice and who believes in the value of egalitarianism to come together and stand regardless of their ethnicity and their identity for the welfare and well-being of all. And in that particular respect, I think it is the responsibility of the religious communities and its leadership, because they are the ones who keep on reminding themselves and others that they believe in a merciful God, that they believe in a God that is a God of all, that they believe in the kindness and compassion and justice, that they have to take the first step to defend the persecuted people. Because one thing that you notice, those who colonized Latin America or the United States, whether they were Spanish or they were Portuguese or they were Europeans or they were Italians, they also shared a religion among themselves. And often they took shelter behind what you call the curtains of the religion to justify what they were doing. When they came to this country and brought the Africans as slaves, they called that ship Jesus. So I think perhaps we have to realize that no one religion, no one community can undertake that responsibilities. All of us have to come together. And in that particular respect, I think we should also remind ourselves that the sacrifice that was offered by Imam Hussein is an example for all of us, that even if you have to stand against your own self, against the people who claim that they are part of your faith and your community, but when it comes to justice, don't hesitate to fight them and don't hesitate to challenge their authority, which is based on illegitimate ideas and illegitimate authority. And that is what basically we all need to. We cannot definitely bring back the past, and we cannot amend what happened in the past, but certainly for the future, we can create that kind of understanding of ourselves, that leaving aside the differences that we have on the basis of our concept of God, our concept of the scriptures, we still have common ground to stand the dignity of the one whom we claim is the creation of God Almighty. Your concluding comments, and then we will basically wrap it up and move forward.
I just to say thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
And again, I want to appreciate IslamiCity, Dr. Abdullah, you, and Dr. Walji for thinking about this. I think you're right. We talk about standing up for justice. As Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had said, the least you can do is speak up. At least that's what you're doing here, living the words that we believe in. And I think this program, I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to hearing the next 6 or 7 more sessions about different communities, the oppressed communities. And I admire you and salute you for putting this program together. And thank you very much.
And we are missing Dr. Walji. Dr. Walji, if you're listening or if you listen to this show, your absence was greatly felt. Hopefully tomorrow you would be able to fix your computer, because tomorrow we have Imam Fatin Sefallah from Las Vegas, who would be talking about the enslavement of Africa. He comes from the African American community, and he's a very well respected leader of the African Americans. And he would talk about the pains and the suffering that his community has gone through for several centuries in this country and in African continent. And basically, we see where we go from that. And after that, we would go about to listen to two rabbis who would basically tell us about the sufferings of the Jewish people throughout the history. Then we would go to the Palestinians, and after that we would go to the South Africans. Then we would go to Uyghur of China. Then we would have Myanmar and the Muslims of India, who are on the verge of facing a genocide. And then on the last day, we would conclude it with the question that we have been asking ourselves: where do we go from now? And what is the message that Imam Hussein gives us and his sacrifice gives us in all these kind of circumstances? Because the world in which we are living is definitely posing a lot of challenges to all of us, to our humanity and to our religiosity. And certainly, unless those people who claim to be religious come forward to stand up for the dignity of human beings, nothing is going to change. As you rightly said it, Dr. Ghouse, the government alone cannot change the conditions and bring about changes, because they represent special interest groups, no matter where they are. It's the people who basically have to realize that they have to hold each other's hand to stand for the dignity of each one of us. So with that, I think I would recite Surah Al-Asr and conclude it with a dua. And thank you very much, Dr. Tosta, and thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, for sparing the time at this late hours at the East Coast and being part of the IslamiCity's discussion. And thank you, IslamiCity, for hosting this function. Once again, inshallah, see you tomorrow at 8:15. And let us recite, as the tradition among Muslims is, the chapter which is called Asr, the time, wal Asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. That by the time human beings are in a loss, except those who stand for good and who substantiate their actions with righteous deeds, and who keep on reminding each other that they have to stand for the truth, and then they have to meet the challenges with patience. And with this, we believe that God may inspire us to do the task that each human being is capable of doing, that is standing up for justice. Thank you very much. May God bless all of you. And with that, we take good night from each one of us, and we say good night to each one of you. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow at 8:15.